Hey everybody, this is Marcus Stewart, and welcome to Call It in the Ring, a wrestling recap and discussion show, all things WWE, or at least at this point, the pay-per-views. And speaking of which, we just had one of the biggest pay-per-views of the year, one of the Big Four, the second longest running show in WWE history, the Thanksgiving tradition, the Survivor Series. And much like the last 2 years now, Survivor Series was built solely on the idea of Raw versus SmackDown, the one night where Raw and SmackDown compete in head-to-head competition, or which is technically not entirely true if you count the Royal Rumble, because that has everybody in it and they're all fighting each other. But you get the idea. They're all competing against each other for brand supremacy, which means nothing, but it's there. And, this was of course, a big show. A lot of things changed in the days leading up to this show. In fact, three of the biggest matches altered. And then there were even some changes made during the show, which is, kind of annoying a bit. But let's just, hop right to it. So, I did not watch the kickoff show, because I was not home yet to watch the kickoff show. So I did not see the tag team elimination tag team match. What it was, the tag elimination match featuring all of the tag teams from both divisions, which equated to like 20 people in the ring. Apparently SmackDown won that match, and they better enjoy it because it was kind of the only thing they won tonight. But then, which is weird because they won the kickoff show, they won that tag match as they should have, because the SmackDown tag division is miles ahead of Monday Night Raw's in terms of just pure credibility. But during the main show, it didn't count in the actual tally, because they're keeping count of how many matches Raw and SmackDown are winning, and they kept saying that match didn't count, which is stupid. For one, because that's like a Raw versus SmackDown match, so why wouldn't it count? And also, why would you say that? You're essentially saying that the pre-show doesn't matter, which, it kind of doesn't. So, unless like a championship's on the line, but for the most part, not super much. But why even hype this up? Like, what was the whole point of going through to we gotta choose captains, and the Usos are hyping up their team, and only for their victory to not count in the official total? That makes no sense at all. I don't get that. Like, why tell people to tune into the pre-show if one of the big head-to-head matches is meaningless for no sensible reason? I didn't get that. I was surprised when they kept saying that throughout the show. I was like, wait, what? I didn't watch it. Apparently, I guess it doesn't matter that I didn't watch it, because the match did not matter. Anyways, let's get off that tangent a bit. We got our first official match of the show, the women's elimination tag match, the SmackDown versus Raw. We got the SmackDown ladies, Carmella, Naomi, Sonya Deville, Asuka, and the mystery partner, because originally Charlotte Flair was asked by Paige to be on this match, and she was hesitant to be on it, kind of storyline, because she had lost her confidence, it seems, after losing to Becky at Evolution. But now due to issues of broken faces, Charlotte is now facing Ronda Rousey, so we need a new body. And that was kind of one of the questions, like, who are we gonna get? And it was Mandy Rose. Mandy Rose was the final pick, which is not surprising, just given her promo on SmackDown like a week ago when she was ripping on everybody on the team, and kind of questioning, or at least sowing some problems with her friend Sonya Deville. She was outright questioning why Sonya made the team and not her, right in Sonya's face. So, not a shock that Mandy made the team. And then, of course, the Raw ladies are Nia Jax, the face breaker Nia Jax, Tamina, Sasha, Mickey James. Oh, Mickey James. Sorry. I'm getting mixed up. Mickey James, Tamina, Nia Jax, and originally it was supposed to be Natalya and Ruby Riott, but apparently during the kickoff show, those two got in some sort of brawl backstage, which I'm assuming is playing off Monday Night Raw, the feud between them with Ruby destroying the sunglasses belonging to Natalya's late father, the great Jim Neidhart. So that was kind of one of the questions going into this match, where how are they going to coexist? And apparently they can, because they beat the crap out of each other before the match even happened. So apparently Alexa Bliss, who was the team captain and not competing, has taken him off the team and replaced them with Sasha Banks and Bayley, who on just the past Raw humiliated by having them fight for a spot, only for neither of them to get it. So, sure. Of course, everyone comes out in t-shirts representing their brand, which is a really annoying visual for me personally. Like, it's not just the ladies, but it's kind of everybody. It just looks tacky to see all the wrestlers wrestling in t-shirts, or at least a majority of them. It just doesn't look as cool, especially for like the kind of like big showdowns, like Nakamura versus Rollins later on. Like, I don't know, there's something aesthetically annoying about like, oh, I want to see them in their, like, just they don't look as cool basically when they're wearing their shirts. And also it's like, do you guys really not think we can remember who's on what show or whatever? Like, just have the announcer say like, hey, this is the Raw team, this is the Smackdown team, and keep them in separate corners. Like, make the corners red and blue for all you have to do, just in case you really don't think we know who's on what show. So I just, that's a thing that always bugged me. I remember that bugged me big time last year, especially with the Shield versus the New Day. Just because the Shield, like, or at least two of them, like, I think it was Rollins and Ambrose, were in the red Raw shirts. And I was like, oh, it's ruining the Shield's kind of like signature black look. Like all black. It just looked dumb. So yeah. But this match is a pretty standard Survivor Series tag. It's okay. The crowd was pretty tepid for it, with the exception of Nia Jax, who gets booed out of the freaking building as soon as she comes out. And pretty much anytime she did anything in the match, they just rained boos down on her. Like, she was like Roman Reigns, but with actual heat, as opposed to kind of Roman's kind of Cena-like heat of like, we're just kind of annoyed by you and stuff. Whereas Nia was like, no, screw you. You took away our Becky versus Ronda match with your careless punch. So that's the only real reaction, was either booing her for doing anything or cheering when something bad would happen to her. Like if someone started beating her up, then people were pretty happy. Let's see, but there were some quick eliminations early. Tamina immediately eliminated Naomi like a minute in, which irked me, because Naomi's one of the most talented ladies in the match, and Tamina is kind of not great. But then she got rolled up by Carmella, so that kind of made up for it. There was a little story here with Mandy Rose stealing Sonya Deville's pin. Like, Sonya had a pin on I can't remember who she had, but Mandy came in, literally pulled or pushed Sonya off of the pin and then stole it. And then Mandy kind of lasted a while. She outlasted Sonya, so it seems they're planning to split those two up, which we may as well. Absolution has been dead since Paige became GM, like, even in her own words, but those two haven't really done anything much together, so I think they'll be better off separate. I like both ladies, so. But yeah, eventually this got down to like Asuka as the lone survivor for SmackDown against Sasha Banks and Nia as the final two for Raw. Sasha and Asuka go at it for a while in a good exchange, as is their norm between those two. And then in a kind of dumb-ish thing, Sasha kind of has Asuka down and she's going up top for her frog splash. And then Nia just inexplicably shoves Sasha off of the ropes and into the Asuka lock to eliminate Sasha, getting us down to Asuka versus Nia. And I guess the idea is that Asuka, or what rather Nia, didn't want to share the spotlight with Sasha, though at the same time, given how much Stephanie likes screeching about how Raw has to win no matter what, because it matters when it really doesn't. But you would think that that would get Nia in trouble, because like we had the advantage and you lost the advantage on purpose just because you wanted to be the lone survivor. Like, what if Asuka just destroyed you and then you lost us because for that? So that seems dumb. Especially since Alexa seems okay with that. Like, yeah, good job. It's like, you're the team captain. You should be pretty pissed at Nia for that. It worked out though, because Nia came in, hit 3 straight leg drops. She was watching Velveteen Dream's match on War Games and decided to try to one-up him. By the way, War Games was a great show. And did the Samoan drop and got the win. So I kind of expected one of two things to happen here, given Nia's punch situation. Was like, either she's going to get eliminated rather quick because she's got some heat, she's in the doghouse for that, or she's going to win because WWE is just going to roll with it. And I think I said that on Raw or SmackDown too, that odds are WWE is just going to roll with it. And I'm not saying that Nia's probably not getting in trouble, but it probably won't be that kind of punishment, of like on-screen punishment. It'll probably be whatever, getting chewed out or whatever backstage. But I was like, they'll probably roll with it because like she has to face Ronda Rousey in the near future, maybe TLC, I would imagine. They're already pushing the idea of like the last time they fought, Nia took her to the limit and we never got a winner, because that's when Alexa Bliss cashed in Money in the Bank during the match. So not only is Nia bigger than Ronda, but now she literally destroyed the face of the SmackDown Women's Champion. She's got the power of the punch minus the brass knuckles. So how is Ronda Rousey supposed to stand up to that? So that is the direction they are absolutely going. Michael Cole kept mentioning like hashtag face breaker or whatever it was that I guess Nia's been putting out there. So yeah, she seems like she's still on track, just in terms of where her story was going. But decent opener. Just the crowd wasn't super duper into it. Kind of whatever. Backstage, Corbin and Stephanie McMahon are really, really happy. And then Stephanie kind of warns Corbin that if he wants to become the permanent GM, the Raw better sweep tonight. And Corbin's like, yeah, I can do that. Paige and Shane McMahon show up and they kind of promise that they're going to win instead. And Corbin makes LeBron James jokes. And that's about it for that. I've said this before, I just think this whole brand thing is just silly. So it's always kind of irksome to see the, I guess primarily Shane and Stephanie bickering over their shows, just because it doesn't mean anything, except it only means anything to them. But in the grand scheme, the show will not matter the week or so after it's over. So it kind of gets a little hard to get to. And actually, I'll go into that in a bit more, because the next match is a dream match. Shinsuke Nakamura, the United States champion on SmackDown, taking on Seth Rollins, the Intercontinental Champion, on Raw. And there's next to no story for this match. They were only put together because of all the matches are Raw versus SmackDown, so it's champions versus champions. So it's like, hey, these are the two mid-card champions. Let's put them against each other. Of course, Rollins is very much in the middle, or not even really in the middle, but kind of in the, we'll say the first third of his big storyline with Dean Ambrose, and has been so focused on that he himself has said that Nakamura, he's not really worried about, or maybe not worried about, he's just not thinking about him at the moment, because, I mean, which makes sense, because, like, in storyline, like kayfabe, he has to focus on his best friend turned bitter enemy, who he still hasn't gotten answers, or I guess he did get some answers on Raw, but he's still trying to get his hands on him. And Nakamura is just a dude who's not even on the same show, who he just kind of is contractually obligated to face. So he all he said is like, oh yeah, like Nakamura's a tough guy. I'm gonna be ready for him. But also, man, Dean Ambrose, I gotta get him. And Nakamura, on the other hand, is I don't say carried the feud, but he's because Nakamura for some reason has, or maybe not some reason, I've kind of talked about why the reason probably is, but he's done next to nothing as U.S. champ and is not on TV consistently. Probably because SmackDown doesn't really have a mid card, and a lot of the mid card ish or the higher up guys are either busy or heels, and the only mid card face that should be challenging for him, Rusev, isn't for some reason. But Nakamura is the only guy that's been like, oh, I've been paying attention to you, Seth, and I'm gonna knee your head off. And that's the extent of the feud. Nakamura is in all blue, which is kind of a weird visual for him. Usually red and black is his thing. He's even got like a long sleeve shirt underneath his SmackDown shirt. So he's very blue tonight, and it's a little off-putting. It's too much blue. He's almost like a Japanese Smurf. Seth has the half Raw, half Rollins shirt, kind of like the half shirt he wore last year at Survivor Series. Still looks not great. And this match was good. It started out a nice little technical chess match. They're both playing mind games with each other, mocking each other's poses and doing stuff. And this was just a good back and forth match that just lacked the heat of an actual story behind it. That's the only thing holding it back. It's like, man, this is good stuff here, but I just wish that it just had more to it, like just a real reason other than, well, we have to face each other. And that's kind of the problem with a lot of these matches, is that there's no real story for them. They're just happening because of the theme, and because the build for Survivor Series was only 2 weeks, they kind of had to rush everything. Like Becky versus Ronda was the only match on this card that had an actual like rivalry and like real meat to it, like substance to the story, and then we lost that. But yeah, this match kind of in this show kind of reinforced the importance of storytelling in wrestling, because like as good of a match or a matchup as you can have, because you got Shinsuke and Seth, who are two of the best in the world, and this is a dream match on paper that you would salivate at, but then you think that would be enough until you're like, well, why are they fighting? And then it kind of just makes the match feel a little bit hollow. It's like, well, I wish there was like just something else there. And in this show, in contrast to NXT TakeOver War Games the night before, which is of course all story, and very much coming off a big story. Like let's look at comparison, like the if you watch NXT, the Aleister Black versus Johnny Gargano match, which was the culmination of like a 2-month story or a mystery, a whodunit of who attacked Aleister Black in the parking lot. He had been laid out and taken out of the last takeover, and that was the big mystery. Nobody knew who did it. There was a ton of suspects. There was footage that showed a bunch of people around that could have been it. And it spent weeks and weeks and weeks trying to figure out who did it. And it was Johnny Gargano, who originally was the biggest babyface on NXT. He was very much the, if you don't watch NXT, he's basically the Daniel Bryan of the show, in terms of like Daniel Bryan's like pre-injury, when he was like just the heart and soul, the scrappy underdog. But he was the one that attacked Aleister Black and more or less went insane and delusional, because he was so obsessed with trying to get his hated rival Tommaso Ciampa, the current NXT champion, and to the point that he decided that he had to fight fire with fire and become a step into the darkness himself. But the problem is that he still thinks he's the good guy, like, which has been great stuff. And Aleister came back and pretty much wants Johnny's head on a pike and said he's going to absolve him of his sins. So that and those two are the two of the best in the entire company, like NXT or WWE. Like, they're fantastic in-ring competitors. So again, you could just put those two in a match without anything. You're like, oh, this will probably be a good match. But having that story attached to it makes it even better. Like, it makes it feel more complete. So like, there's emotion to the match of like, oh, I want to see. I'm so disappointed in Johnny Gargano's actions. I want to see Aleister Black get his, basically, or not get his, but you want Johnny to get his from Aleister Black. And Nakamura versus Rollins, I know I'm kind of harping on this for a bit, But it really is kind of the overall theme of the show. It's like, oh man, this match is good. I just wish, like, I don't know, just if this was a WrestleMania match instead, where they could actually build to a story, kind of like Michaels, HBK, Shawn Michaels against Kurt Angle at WrestleMania 21, where that was a Raw versus SmackDown match, but it got started at the Rumble, and it started with Shawn eliminating Kurt in the Rumble, and then Kurt taking exception to that, going back in, eliminating Michaels and beating the shit out of him, and then establishing later on that he's always been resentful of Michaels because back in 1996 when Kurt won a gold medal, that was the same year that Shawn became WWE champion at WrestleMania 12 in the Iron Man match against Brett, and saying how everybody was talking about that and how this guy named Shawn Michaels was the best in the world, but like no one cares about his gold medal, and that always bothered him and kind of like it's been eating away at him for years. And now he wants to prove, since Shawn is always considered the best in-ring or performer ever, but so is Kurt, and Kurt wants to prove that he's that guy and this is his chance. And like that was like, oh yeah, okay, like they're not even on the same show, but they've managed to come up with a really good and logical story for why these guys are fighting, get me into it. And yeah, I would have loved to see something like that for this match, but we didn't. So, and in a somewhat surprising finish, Seth wins clean with the curb stomp, and he just wins. I think a lot of people expected or that Dean Ambrose would interfere. In fact, 3 of the biggest matches all had like a very high chance for interference, because there was this the WWE Championship match between Daniel Bryan and Brock Lesnar. AJ Styles was pretty much like, oh, he could interfere. And then the women's match, Charlotte versus Ronda, was like, oh, Becky could interfere maybe. So that was kind of those 3 matches, kind of waiting to see who's going to run in. But no Dean at all. And I kind of thought that Shinsuke would win because he very much needed it more, whereas Seth could have taken a loss here, especially if Ambrose interfered, because he'll be fine because he's actually doing something right now, whereas Shinsuke's doing nothing. So at least this would have given him something to kind of hang his hat on, just to beat Seth. So I kind of wish that Ambrose interfered here, or just did something like played his music to distract him, or just anything to give Shinsuke the win so that he has some sort of momentum, because he's pretty ice cold right now as US champ. But yeah, that brings Raw 2-0 in the tally on the scoreboard. Backstage, we see Braun Strowman, and he hates everyone on his Survivor Series team except for Finn Balor. He says Finn Balor's okay, and because Braun is the captain, or I guess no, he's not the captain. Baron Corbin's the captain, but he's not competing, even though Braun is kind of the captain because he's like hyping everyone up like the captain, so it's weird. I don't know why they're captains, because the captains are absolutely meaningless. Like, they don't do anything special. But yeah, like Braun was more of a captain in this scene than Corbin has been the entire time that he was announced as it. But yeah, he threatens to kill all of them if they fail tonight. Drew McIntyre, of course, takes exception to this, and him and Braun are about to come to blows when Corbin comes in, and he starts talking shit to Braun, reminding him that Braun can't touch Corbin until after Survivor Series. Braun's like, okay, I'll find a way around that, and he grabs Leo Rush, he didn't even know who Leo Rush was in a funny moment, and he throws Leo into Corbin, which does not count as touching Corbin. And then R-Truth comes in, and he starts hyping up the team tonight, and everyone's looking at Truth like he has 3 heads, and Corbin reminds him that Truth is not on Raw, he's on SmackDown, this is not your team. And Truth, looking very confused, leaves. So, yep, just a funny little Truth moment there. Next up, we've got the battle of the tag champions. We've got the Raw tag team champions, AOP, taking on the SmackDown tag team champions, The Bar, Sheamus and Cesaro. And if Rollins versus Nakamura had minimal story, this match literally has 0 story. Like, these two have not interacted at all. Like, they have not talked about the other team on their shows. They like nothing. The Bar has been busy with New Day, and AOP killed Seth Rollins to become champions. So yeah, you can kind of copy and paste my previous little rant about the importance of story in wrestling and paste it twice for this match. On paper, this was kind of a dark horse for like a surprisingly good match, because the Bar is a great power brawler team, And AOP has become a good power brawler team, especially since they're kind of like second half of their NXT run. So it's like, oh man, like this could be good if they just let these two teams just go out and beat the crap out of each other. And this match it wound up being okay. It wasn't very long, and then a lot of it was spent. Well, first of all, in the beginning of the match, something happened in the crowd where like in the hard camera, which is the straight ahead view, like the standard view of the ring, like those fans in the front row were all reacting to something for the first few minutes and like chanting and yelling. I don't know what happened. I don't think it was a beach ball, but something was going on. Whatever happened in the crowd probably had more story than this match. And so that kind of threw things off. And then this is going on for a few minutes. And then Drake Maverick, who is the AOP's manager, as well as the general manager of 205 Live, still kind of confusing. He gets involved in the match. He saves one of the AOP from getting pinned by putting his leg on the rope. Cesaro and Sheamus see this. Cesaro tries to chase Maverick. Maverick flees and then runs right into Big Show. And then Big Show picks up Maverick and is like, puts him on the apron. And he's like choking him. He's not throwing him or anywhere. He's just kind of just holding him by the neck for a while. And then Maverick pees his pants. Like, he literally pees his pants. Like, they focus on him being choked for a while and kind of in an uncomfortable while. Because you're like, is Big Show going to throw him? Or what is happening here? And then they kind of, like, Show notices that, like, a wet streak starts forming in his pants. And then, of course, the camera zooms in on his crotch, which is an interesting shot. And yeah, we just see a streak of wetness in his pants. And yeah, Drake Maverick beat his pants out of fear of getting killed by Big Show. And then Sheamus and Cesaro are distracted by this, and they're just pointing. They're all like pointing like schoolyard jerks, like, oh, this kid beat his pants. What a loser. Ha ha. And Maverick is very much not happy. And this is just weird because they spend a couple minutes on this. And then the AOP use the distraction to get Sheamus into their like neck breaker powerbomb combo, which is probably, they've been using it as a finisher a lot. I guess it's better looking than the last chapter. But yeah, the AOP wins because their manager peed his pants and distracted the 5-time tag team champion and their giant friend. What a weird way for this super dominant team to win this match. But yeah, this match was pretty underwhelming and just a bizarre. I don't even know if it's a bad finish as much as it's just bizarre. But yeah, Raw is now 3-0 because remember the pre-show doesn't count, so they're not 3-1. They're 3-0 right now. So that's surprising that this sweep is underway. Backstage, Miz is hyping up his team as the captain of the team. He lets Shane do speech duties. Shane's like, okay, and he kind of goes to each of his members. Of course, the team is Miz, Shane, Jeff Hardy, Rey Mysterio, and Samoa Joe. Shane hypes up every individual guy, talking about how great they are. And then Truth shows up again, asking if he can join the SmackDown roster. Shane reminds him that he is already a SmackDown superstar, and Truth is relieved because, quote, it's a mess over there on Raw, which is more of a shoot than maybe they realized. Let's see, Miz does offer Truth a Marine photo, but Truth is really happy at the idea of getting an autograph photo from Becky Lynch, which I would be too, so Truth has good taste. Next up, we have the Cruiserweight Championship match between the champion Buddy Murphy defending against Mustafa Ali. And I was shocked that this actually made the main show in a good way. Because I don't watch 205 Live at all, just so much wrestling. I just don't have the time to watch it. So this is the last, I only watch these title matches when they make the show. So this is the first match I've seen since Super Showdown, which is apparently... that's when Buddy Murphy won the title from Cedric Alexander in his home country of Australia. And this, apparently I haven't missed all that much. because this is Buddy Murphy's first title defense since then, and this is also Mustafa Ali's first title challenge since WrestleMania, when him and Cedric faced off for the then vacated title. I'm happy that Mustafa has gotten this far. I've liked Mustafa Ali for a while, and I've liked the idea, like he's good in the ring, but I've also just personally I've liked that they haven't made him like a stereotypical like foreign heel because he's Arab. Because he's American, he's from Chicago, and he's billed as being from Chicago because that's where he's fucking from. But just when you look at him and he has a name like Mustafa Ali, like WWE would like 9 times out of 10 be like, okay, so you're just gonna be the anti-American Arab guy because that's all we know how to do with Arab superstars now. Thankfully, I don't know if it's because Arya Davari is also on 205 Live and he kind of fills that role, so he can't have two. Maybe that's why Mustafa has dodged that bullet, but I'm very glad that he is just a guy. He's a good guy. He's a babyface. He's not that guy. It's very refreshing. And actually, this match as a whole is refreshing because this is the only match on the show that has nothing to do with brand supremacy. It's a championship match and the only title match on the show, and it has an actual story behind it because of it. And watching the recap package, which was very good, and that's kind of WWE's video packages are always fantastic, especially when you don't watch the shows, because they're always good at catching you up. So like, I don't watch 205 Live, but I got everything I needed to know about this match from that very well done package of like, okay, Mustafa has been chasing this thing for pretty much the entire year, but just hasn't gotten it done. And then Murphy has kind of shot up 205 Live, and he's been this dominant champion. So now he's to defend against Ali, who's been like the heart and soul of 205 Live. So it's like, okay, nice. I like that this actually has like a rivalry. It's got some heat. Apparently they got into it during a weigh-in. I was like, okay, that's all I need to kind of sink my teeth into this thing. And this was a really good match. This was a fun cruiserweight style match. Ali is a really good high flyer. He was both flying and falling all over the place. He took a nasty looking fall when he was like on a top rope to do something, and then Buddy just shoves him backwards into the barricade, and it looked brutal and kind of scary. Like the idea that I'm just gonna fall backwards from this thing, and you can't really see where you're gonna land. You just gotta hope that it's like, I'm gonna hit the barricade, and hopefully I hit it in a way that doesn't injure me somehow. Finn Balor screwed up his shoulder, taking a less devastating version of that from Seth Rollins. So like, God only knows what could have happened to Ali, but he was fine, thankfully. At one point, Ali hit his Spanish fly off the announce table to the floor, and that actually got a 205 chant, which I've never heard. So because usually, I've gotten so used to the cruiserweights time appearing on Raw and becoming kind of the new bathroom break, unfortunately, where fans just did not care. It didn't matter what they did. They just felt out of place in the show, and it didn't help that cruiserweight wrestling is just not as special as it used to be because that style has been incorporated by main event heavier guys. So it just isn't unique to see a guy doing a 450 splash when Seth Rollins can do like a Phoenix splash and all that stuff too. So, but yeah, the fans seem to appreciate this, and it got a "This is awesome" chant at one point, which was certainly well deserved because this really got good. And then Murphy won, which isn't surprising. I didn't think they would change the title. Murphy seems like he would be a pretty good heel champion. Maybe he kind of gives me Neville vibes. I loved Neville when he was cruiserweight champion and doing his King of the Cruiserweights thing. I think that was he was easily one of the best characters in the entire company. So like, Murphy's kind of giving me that vibe a bit of just being this like no nonsense, just brutal heel champion. So I was like, yeah, he probably isn't going to lose it on his first defense. But a great showing from Ali, and he totally deserves to hold that thing at some point. So really refreshing match just for having a story around it on this show. So good work, guys. Daniel Bryan shows up. He's backstage, and he's approached for an interview, and he's asked about how he's going to handle Brock Lesnar, given that he's had minimal time to prepare for it. Bryan just kind of has a smug smile and just walks off without saying a word. Which is interesting. Of course, Bryan is freshly heel now, given that he cheated to win the WWE Championship from AJ on the previous SmackDown. We get a vignette for Lars Sullivan. NXT's Lars Sullivan. If you've never seen him, imagine a boulder with arms and legs and a head, and that's more or less what he is. He is a big, terrifying, strong man. And he's been pretty good stuff down in NXT, but he's getting the call up, it seems. Doesn't say what show, it just says Lars Sullivan coming soon. Which is cool. You don't really see that much anymore. It feels like WWE has kind of conditioned fans to only expect NXT call-ups either the night after WrestleMania, like the Raw, and I guess the SmackDown too, like we'll say the week, WrestleMania week afterwards. Like that's the only time you see new people show up. Or if they do show up at a different time of the year, it's like a surprise, like somebody just shows up, kind of like even though she didn't stick around, but like Nikki Cross challenging Becky Lynch. You really don't see like them actually building up an NXT call-up like this with just vignettes showing like, hey, this guy's a big deal. Here's some clips of him mauling people in NXT. You better watch out. Which they should totally do more. And I would like to see more. Like, it doesn't only have to be WrestleMania weekend to bring guys up. Because one, that kind of pigeonholes you of like, if the rest of the year of like, oh, we could really use new talent right now, but it's not WrestleMania weekend, so nobody can come up. That's the only time that door opens. So yeah, like just mix that up and get people excited for these guys, because sometimes I think WWE just assumes that everybody watches NXT, which is a terrible assumption because that is certainly not the case. So they'll just bring up NXT talent and expect people to care. It was like, oh, well, you know him, right? He got super big in NXT. It was like, okay, well, maybe like a third of the crowd at best might know, but everyone else like doesn't. So like you gotta introduce us to them like properly. Like, why should I care about this guy? Like, okay, he was in NXT, like, yeah, but I don't watch NXT, so why should I care? I do watch NXT obviously, so I care already, but yeah, I feel like they don't take that into account for a lot of the call-ups. So it's good to see that Lars is getting it, because he certainly should, because he is quite the specimen, as they say. Next up, somewhat surprisingly, we get the men's elimination match between Braun Strowman, Drew McIntyre, Dolph Ziggler, Finn Balor, and Bobby Lashley representing Raw, with Baron Corbin as the captain, who is not competing, against Team SmackDown, which is the captain Miz, along with Shane McMahon, Jeff Hardy, Samoa Joe, and Rey Mysterio. For the first year, this is not the main event. You know, this closed the last 2 years, but it's kind of somewhere in the middle here. This match was it was better than last year's. I thought last year's men's Survivor Series match was kind of a mess and just weird in the ending. It was just it just wasn't very good. Though this also was not as good as the 2016 men's Survivor Series match, which I thought was excellent and a lot of fun and very long too. I think that match was like 40 something minutes, but it was really good 40 something minutes. Like there was some good stuff on that. So that the 2016 SmackDown versus Raw men's match is still the bar to hit, but this match is in the middle of the last 2 years. The kind of stories that Raw was kind of dysfunctional, mainly between Braun and Drew. Braun wanted to start the match, and Drew tagged himself in anyway because he's a prick. And then Drew kept tagging himself in every time Braun was in. Kind of a lame way to start. Samoa Joe immediately tries to choke out Drew McIntyre. Drew gets out of it, and Claymore kicks him immediately and takes him out. And that got a big bullshit chant from the crowd, which I agree with. I don't know if Joe is hurt again, which I pray to God is not the case, because I don't think he can afford another injury. Or if this was just like an intentional, like, hey, you know, it'd be shocking. What if Joe, the biggest killer on Team SmackDown, was out immediately? Wouldn't that be crazy? But yeah, that was really lame to see Joe get out that early. But yeah, so like Raw is falling apart. Just like Finn Balor took a shot at Drew at one point, and then at one point Braun and Drew just get into a full-on brawl, and the rest of Team Raw has to come in and try to break it up. And then in an illogical moment, SmackDown, instead of just sitting back and just letting Raw implode and just chilling, they get in too and start trying to fight, which I thought was really dumb. Of like, you see the two biggest threats on the team killing each other, just don't do anything. Let them figure it out. Like, I would just chill out in the apron. It's like, yeah, do what you want, guys. Keep fighting each other. Especially considering that SmackDown is very much at a deficit when it comes to wins. So that was dumb. Shane McMahon is kind of all over this match too, where he hit his eventually like Team SmackDown like started beating up Braun, and then they put him on the announce table, and Shane does his top rope elbow drop from the ring to the table to take him out for a little bit. So Shane is a little worse for wear. He's kind of out of the match for a few minutes. And then eventually like Shane like Miz keeps having Shane do all of these things, even though Shane after this elbow drop is like mostly dead. But he like Miz is telling him, like he said he like beats up Dolph. It's like, hey, you should hit coast to coast, get up there. And Shane kind of like does it, like limping, and he looks like he's about to pass out. He's like, okay, I'll do it. And he hits it. And then he does the same, or he tries to do the same to, I think, was it Lashley, I think? Or Drew, one of them. But it does not work because this time Braun clothesline Shane out of the air to kill him even more. I think the only matchup that really got me, that really raised my eyebrows was Finn Balor against Rey Mysterio. They went at it for a bit, and I was like, oh yes. Doesn't last too long, but Rey eliminated Balor. And yeah, this is pretty all right. Like, it's not a bad match. It's got some good points in it. Eventually, Braun just starts going ham, and I think he eliminated Jeff and Rey back to back. And then Shane, eventually Miz gets killed by Braun too. And eventually it comes down to Shane McMahon as the sole survivor for SmackDown for the second year in a row, which is ridiculous, really, when you think about it. He has outlasted a team of former world champions, plus Samoa Joe, who is world champion. He's former world champion in other promotions, against the trio of Bobby Lashley, Drew McIntyre, and Braun Strowman. That is what Shane is up against. And Shane is just spent here after kind of at Miz's request, jumping all over the place. And he kind of realizes what he is facing and kind of resigns himself to the fact that he is all sorts of screwed. But he tells Braun to bring it, because Braun is the legal man. Braun has no problem with that and just runs Shane over, hits the power slam, and gets the win. So Raw not only continues their sweep of the show, this brings them 4-0, but they more or less demolished Team SmackDown, having 3 sole survivors. I don't know why Raw is just annihilating SmackDown. This is also, by the way, this men's Survivor Series victory is the 3rd year in a row that Raw has won that specific match. So this is like a streak of a streak, basically. It's 2 streaks in a row. So yeah, in case you were wondering what the flagship show was, you really shouldn't, I guess, at least in WWE's eyes. SmackDown is just getting stomped on for some reason. And after the match, Baron Corbin hits Braun from behind and runs. So now that feud can kind of get going in earnest. But I guess now that Braun has won for Stephanie, she has to deliver his rematch for the Universal Championship, which was the deal that they made on Raw. So at least that should be good. Maybe, hopefully. Backstage, Seth Rollins is being interviewed, and he says he feels lucky that he won tonight. And then he's told that at TLC in, I think it's 4 weeks, he will be defending the Intercontinental Championship against Dean Ambrose, because that feud is, this very personal feud is about championships now. Which seems kind of random. Seth just says that Dean's not going to have anywhere to hide, but yeah, I guess. I guess now that Brock's Universal Champion again, the IC Championship is once again the main event title of the show, just by default. Next up, we get to maybe the most interesting match in the show, and I say maybe because the main event also had that, might have that distinction. But we get to Charlotte Flair taking on Ronda Rousey in a legitimate dream match that everyone, or most everyone, myself included, would have pegged to main event WrestleMania 35, and that seemed very much to be the rumor or like likelihood. But because of what happened with Becky Lynch getting her face broken, Becky picked Charlotte to replace her, and we're getting it here instead. And then, like I said on SmackDown, maybe now because of this, or at least at the time, I thought maybe they'll do Becky versus Ronda instead. Now that match has even more interest on it, to have Becky and Ronda main event WrestleMania. So this match was very good. In fact, I thought it was awesome. Like, these two, I think everyone kind of guessed that these two would mesh well together. And that assumption proved correct. Like, this was a very physical match from the get-go. Like, these two ladies they've got chemistry. Some pairings just work, and this one works very well. Like, they were trading submissions just left and right. Everything they did looked really intense and real. Like, Charlotte, obviously, like, her motivation, like, she's kind of I guess kind of like playing off the thing of like her losing her confidence after losing to Becky, but now she kind of gets it back during this match, and kind of in the, I guess before, where like now that she's fighting for Becky, even though she's her hated rival, I guess the idea is that they have her respect. And I guess even for Charlotte personally to kind of get to test herself against Ronda, who's become the queen of the division, even as a whole, which Charlotte has always been. So Charlotte kind of maybe the motivation of like, hey, this chick's moving in on my turf, trying to take my throne, and this is my chance to kind of reestablish that I'm the best. And then Ronda just, she'll break anyone's arm, and she wants to fight the best. So like there was like a natural rivalry here, even though it got very little build up just because of this was not WWE's fault, because this was not the original plan. But yeah, these two I just felt like these two wanted to beat the hell out of each other, and they beat the crap out of each other. Like Ronda's doing her shit, and this is easily Ronda's best singles match to date, like without question. And that's account of Ronda has gotten a lot better, but also because of who she's working with, because Charlotte is probably the best complete performer on the roster, at least in my opinion. There are a few ladies that certainly rival her, namely, I'd say Becky, Sasha, and Asuka. But yeah, Charlotte she's great. And sometimes I think she gets a bad rap just because of her, she can kind of be booked to, or at least she was booked to, maybe fans felt she was being shoved down people's throats. But I think this was a reminder of how great Charlotte really is. But I was super into this match. Like, I was all on board for this, and they're just killing each other, and everything looks crisp, and I didn't know who was gonna win this, but then in a very surprising ending, Flair kind of baits Ronda outside the ring, and Ronda charges at her, and then out of nowhere Charlotte pulls out a kendo stick and just nails Ronda in the gut with it for an intentional DQ. And I literally, I think I audibly said, come on, what? Where did that come from? And of course, even the announcers react the same, why would Charlotte do that? She just cost herself the match. She totally blatant DQ. So now Raw is 5-0, by the way. And I mean, from that perspective, that just seems really dumb. Does Charlotte, I mean, I guess she does not care about brand supremacy. I mean, I guess it's a foregone conclusion that Raw is going to win at this point. Even if there's only 2 matches left, and even if SmackDown won both, Raw would still win pretty decisively. So maybe that could be a reasoning why. But yeah, this was probably Raw's best chance this was probably SmackDown's best chance to get on the board, and there it just went away. But yeah, she hits her with the kendo stick. And then proceeds to beat the crap out of Ronda with the kendo stick. She just snaps, and she even breaks the kendo stick on Ronda's body, and then pulls out another one and throws her back in the ring, and just starts, she kind of goes like Stone Cold at WrestleMania 17 when he turned heel and started just destroying The Rock with the chair. She pretty much like does that, but with a kendo stick. And so like Ronda's taking the beating of her life, and she is covered like afterwards she is covered in welts and looked awful. But the crowd is actually reacting really positively to this. Like this is the most positive reaction Charlotte has gotten in a long time. Like there's a thank you Charlotte chant and all this stuff. The referees try to come out. Charlotte beats up the referees too. Like Charlotte just like loses her mind here. And the commentators are wondering like why is Charlotte doing this? And Charlotte has this look on her face like she is just a mad woman. She eventually grabs a chair, tries to hit Ronda with the chair. The ref stop her. She teases that she's gonna leave, runs back in and hits natural selection on Ronda on top of the chair, and then beats her up some more. And then she even Pillmanizes Ronda's neck, which if you're not familiar with Pillmanizing, it's named after Brian Pillman, the late great Brian Pillman, one of the best ever. He had this move where he would put a limb, like a leg, between the chair, like it's like a folding chair, of course, a wrestling chair. You put your leg or arm in between the person's chair, and then you stomp on it, and the idea is that would break the person's leg or whatever. And we've seen a few people do it to the neck, and she does that. She puts Ronda's head in between the folding chair and her neck, and then like the refs are gonna stop her, and it seems like she's not gonna get to do it. But then she again dispatches of the ref and stomps on the chair, so she Pillmanizes Ronda's neck, which is pretty. Even in Charlotte's heel days, I don't think she's ever done anything that dastardly. So like even like the commentators are like just burying basically Charlotte or like condemning her, and even Corey Graves is going off on Charlotte for this, saying that this is like he's always liked Charlotte but not anymore, and like there's no place for this. Like they're making Charlotte out to be like Dean Ambrose basically when he turned on the Shield, like just all over her for what she's doing. And then that's enough for Charlotte to finally kind of end this rampage. And the crowd is still just like, woohoo, Charlotte, you're the best. Thanks for killing Ronda Rousey for everybody. And for the first time, at least for me, I felt like genuine sympathy for Ronda. The live crowd might disagree with that. But yeah, like, I mean, I've always liked Ronda. I still like Ronda a lot. I really don't have any issue with her at all. And she's impressed me every time she's wrestled. And especially, like I said, this is easily her best match. Like, she was great in this. But like, just the image of like her just in this crumpled heap, like her body is covered in welts from those kendo sticks. Like she had one nasty one in her arm. So she's covered in welts from all the gazillion kendo stick shots that she took. Presumably she has an injured throat. And she just looks like she looks like she got fucked up, basically. Which you don't often see in wrestling, of like guys and girls will go through like a hardcore match or something like that, falling through a bunch of tables and all that stuff, and they even after that they'll still like just visually look okay, at least more okay than you would think after what they went through. But Ronda looked like she had been just assaulted. And she sells it pretty well. And what's interesting is that, so like after she gets her neck stomped, a bunch of the trainers come out and like agents backstage, and they're all trying to help Ronda up. Ronda eventually manages to stand up on her own power, which is a bit of a little weird given that her neck was Pillmanized. Like I expected them to do like the stretcher job, neck brace, all that stuff. But they don't. She stands up, but still looking very much like she had been hit by a car. And the crowd just unmercifully just unloads on her, saying, I think they did a "You deserve it" chant. I don't remember, but no sympathy, it seemed like, from Los Angeles. And Ronda, at least to me, she had this look like she was upset with the audience, like she was, or like, I don't know so much upset, but also like half disappointed. Like she was, upset at Charlotte, of course. Kind of like, what the hell? We were having this great back and forth match, and then you beat the shit out of me for no reason. Or but then like the crowd, like, I guess because Ronda always comes out despite being a murderer in the ring, she's always very friendly with the fans. Like she always comes out with a big smile. She gives like the kid her glove thing that she does. And she's always like like with the fans themselves, she's always been very jovial and friendly with them. So this kind of like, at least to me in my own headcanon, she's, she has this crowd saying that she deserved this unjust beating that she took, and she looked like she was gonna cry almost, like she was like angry but gonna cry, but like she was trying not to cry because she's too tough for that, and she exits the ring. This is kind of like a long exit for her, where she's trying to get out the ring, and she's walking up the ramp, and she keeps looking back, and the crowd is just kind of being jerks to Ronda, and she looks back like on the ramp, and she just looks like she had this it looked like she had this moment of realization that the people turned on her, or that the people don't are like aren't in her corner the way that she thought they were, and how like this moment of disillusionment of like, how could they cheer for something like this, like what have I done to them. So I would say that could very much plant the seeds for a heel turn, because which Ronda should probably go through, because one, she's so dominant, like legit. Obviously, Ronda's a legit killer. So she can only run through people so many times as a face. Like she might be more effective as like a heel, kind of like, I don't want to say like the female Brock Lesnar, but that's kind of an inescapable comparison, except that Ronda's actually there every week, so she's better than Brock by default. And I guess she's kind of better because she actually tries in like most of her matches, or all of them. Anyways, but yeah, to kind of set her up as this unbeatable heel who just wants to hurt people, kind of basically like Shayna Baszler down in NXT, like pretty much just that blueprint. So yeah, maybe they'll set that up. It'll be weird because we've had a lot of heel turns in WWE recently, including tonight. Like Charlotte's snap is very much a heel turn because she's been face for quite a while. So now we have and I'm curious how SmackDown will address this. So now we have Becky and Charlotte, two of the biggest women on the women's roster, are both big heels now. Though I guess the crowd might, I'm curious to see how Charlotte gets a reaction on SmackDown. Like, will they treat her as a heel, or will she get cheered, much like Becky for what she did? And do her and Becky reunite now? But regardless, on paper, she is now a villain. So we've had two major heel turns this week, her and Daniel Bryan, and it feels like I think the fourth or fifth big heel turn in the last month or so, between Ambrose and I guess going back even further with like Becky, and I guess in NXT, if you want to count Johnny Gargano. Like there's been a lot of heel turns in recent times, and not too many face turns. I think Elias is the only person that's turned face recently. So yeah, but now, so like I said before, like I guess that maybe they would be switching up the main event of like, we'll do Becky and Ronda at WrestleMania, but after this, I don't know, because this match didn't get a conclusion, and now it has this whole other element. Like they have to pay this off somehow. So like Charlotte versus Ronda could still be on for WrestleMania, because like, when is the next time these two are going to be able to face, since they're on separate shows, except for maybe Mania? Even though technically, according to Survivor Series, this is the only time of year when Raw and SmackDown can fight each other. So even Mania, it can't happen. But it'll happen at Mania. But then when does Becky get her match? I mean, because both of them are SmackDown, so like, what do they do now? Because like now I want to see, like the Charlotte thing is so hot that I want to see them, meet again. And now that we've seen the match and seen how awesome it is, like it's like I want to see another one of those, and with a finish. And so on one hand, they could still do Charlotte versus Ronda at WrestleMania, and it could very much feel like like a bigger match now, because of like, I know some people might think like, oh, well, they wasted the first encounter at Survivor Series. For one, to say that they wasted it at another of the big four is kind of weird. But I kind of think about WrestleMania 13 with Brett versus Steve Austin, the I Quit match, which is one of the greatest matches of all time, if you've never seen it. But people forget that match is a rematch from their Survivor Series 1996 match, which is also excellent, but never really gets talked about because you always think of the Mania match, which it is a better match. But their Survivor Series match is fantastic, but that's what the 13 match is, a rematch from that. So if they follow that blueprint of like the first encounters at Survivor Series, and then if they manage to blow this match out of the way at WrestleMania, that'll be great. And they very much have the potential to do so, because like I really can't praise this match enough. I was so into this match. So they could do that there. But then where does that leave Becky? Because Becky has to get her shot too. So I was thinking, like, do they do a triple threat main event? I mean, it would, and like, I guess that would make sense, because like all three of them have unfinished business with each other. I mean, maybe not so much Becky and Charlotte, because I mean, in WWE's eyes, they'll be like, oh, they're renewing their rivalry, even though Becky decisively won the feud with Charlotte. But you know, they'll find some reason to have them go at it. But yeah, like that seems to be the only way to pay this off, kind of a two birds with one stone of like Becky versus Charlotte versus Ronda for, I guess, a championship. I don't know, but at the same time, somebody would have, if you're going to put a title on the line, like they got to shuffle the shows. Like all three of them got to get on the same show somehow. So, and Ronda's not going to SmackDown. Like there's no way in hell that's happening. But then Becky and Charlotte are so big. Do you move them to Raw? And then like, who do you replace? Like you got to send like Sasha and like Alexa or someone over at SmackDown to kind of make up for two huge names like that moving. Or do they stay on SmackDown, but Ronda defends against both of them, and then is the idea that if one of them wins, they'll just go to Raw, but they're still technically SmackDown? Kind of like, I guess would it be like Asuka when she won the Rumble, where she was always a Raw superstar, but challenged Charlotte, and she would only become a SmackDown star if she won the title, but until then, she is still Raw. So that was technically a Raw versus SmackDown match at WrestleMania 34. So maybe they'll do that, but like, that seems like what they would have to do now is a triple threat, which would be fine, and like I said, makes sense. But I guess personally, I feel like just if you're gonna do the I feel like the first women's WrestleMania main event, just as a purist, I feel like it should be a traditional singles match for the title. Like just take the two most over women and have them fight for the top prize. Like kind of like I don't know, like something about diluting the match and making it a triple threat, even though this would be maybe the hottest triple threat in years. And again, makes storyline sense. I don't know, there's something about having that milestone be a triple threat, and just instead of a traditional singles match that has always, or at least usually, main evented the show, and you know the men have been able to pull off, like the women could do the same. Like we don't need any extra bells and whistles, we can just take two women and have them fight for a belt and have it draw as much as of a men's match. So just like, I guess like for me, I feel like that would mean more. But if they do the triple threat route, at least it won't be slapped together, because like I keep saying, this has set up that, because Charlotte and Becky have to meet Ronda again, because they both have inconclusive stories now, and they're on separate shows, so they can't just pay this off next week or anything. So yeah, that I've nothing else. They've put a lot of intrigue on these three ladies, and I'm really excited to see where all three of them go now after this, and what Charlotte's explanation is going to be for this assault. But yeah, great stuff here, and this was kind of the shot in the arm from like a storytelling perspective that the show needed. And now that brings us to the main event. The WWE Champion, Daniel Bryan, freshly heel and freshly champion. He's only been both for about 5 days, taking on the Universal Champion from Raw, Brock Lesnar. And this is a dream match, and we were allegedly supposed to get this match 4 years ago at SummerSlam 2014, but Bryan got hurt when he was champion after WrestleMania 30, and then Cena picked it up, and he had to take that ass whooping instead. But according to Bryan himself, that was the original plan, was that he would hold it from WrestleMania 30 to SummerSlam, where he would drop it to Brock. And I remember him saying at the time he was really disappointed that he didn't get to face Brock, because he really wanted to do it. And now he's got his wish. And I don't think I ever expected this match to actually happen, let alone this, I guess, relatively this soon into Bryan's return. And especially under these conditions where Bryan is now a heel. And this is his first appearance as turning heel, and we have not gotten an explanation for it. That'll wait for SmackDown. But because we don't have an explanation, we don't know what to make of Bryan yet. Like, what is his attitude going to be? What is his demeanor? And do we cheer for him? Because Brock is very much a heel himself. So we got a heel versus heel, world champion versus world champion match. That's a dream match. But Bryan is very much the underdog here because he is like a child next to Brock. So like that alone would make you want to cheer Bryan because you want to see him hold his own against this monster. But now we're supposed to hate Bryan because of how he screwed over AJ Styles and became champion. So do you want to see Brock destroy Bryan, I guess now? Which, I mean, it's not as exciting because, like, of course Brock can destroy Bryan, so it's not like it's much of a drama there. So this is just a weird match, just for all the different things going into it. Of like, I don't know what to feel here. I mean, I wanted Bryan to win because I like Daniel Bryan a lot, and Brock I'm kind of over. But yeah, Bryan. So Bryan comes out, and he does not do the yes chance. He kind of teases he's gonna do it, and then he's like, nah, and he walks to the ring. Which is kind of funny, given that his side plates on his belt just say yes, yes, yes. I'm wondering if he'll get like new ones or something. But he comes to the ring and he's got a very smug look and he's got a swagger about him, just like a very confident, smug swagger that I actually like a lot. And he kind of walks around the ring a few times, looking very confident despite the apocalypse that awaits him. And Brock comes out, and Bryan is taunting him. Like, just kind of like saying like, hey, bring it, big man. He's kind of like leading him around the ring, like kind of like trying to like a mild chase, I guess, and getting in the ring. And Brock is looking at him like, kind of like, is this guy serious? And then like even before the bell, like Bryan does not look scared of Brock at all. He looks so confident. Like whatever he's got going in his head, you're like, what does Bryan have in mind here? Because he looks like he's up to something. But then the bell rings, Bryan gets a running dropkick to the leg immediately and then kind of begs off. And Brock's like, all right. And then and for the first bit of this match, it's Bryan kind of playing keep away, like just dodging Brock, getting out of the ring, walking around, just trying to annoy him, get in his head. And Brock's just kind of like getting more and more impatient. But then eventually Bryan tries to throw a kick to Brock. Brock catches it. And then the pain begins. And Brock immediately Germans suplexes Bryan right on top of his head, which, given Bryan's history with concussions, I remember like just cringing, like kind of jumping a bit at that. Like I remember, I think that was the thing. I was like, man, if Bryan and Brock ever face each other post Bryan's injury, it's going to be terrifying to watch because you're just gonna, like, every time Brock drops him in his head, you're going to wonder like, oh God, is Bryan okay? So I very much felt that after that first German suplex. And then the match is just a giant squash for a long time. Like, it is Bryan getting destroyed, like, by Brock. Like, not getting a single bit of offense. Bryan's getting thrown around with Germans and belly-to-bellies and all this stuff. And the crowd is kind of like how I don't think they know how to react to this. Because it's like, oh, we should feel bad for Bryan, but he's an asshole now. So, like, this is what he deserves, I guess. But also, we're sick of Brock, so we would probably like to see Bryan, like, we would like to see Brock get his, I guess, of like, someone please beat Brock, since the only guy that's been allowed to is no longer with us, or at least no longer in the company. He's not dead. Roman Reigns I'm talking about. Like, the one guy that would be able to rescue us from Brock is now gone, so somebody needs to be the new guy. So anyone would be great, because we're so tired of Brock's, but like, yeah, so like they're kind of quiet and I guess kind of shocked that the WWE champion, even though it's Bryan and he's smaller, but like he's still the WWE champion, he just won the belt, that he's being treated like a joke, I guess, somewhat. And then the commentators are sounding super concerned for Bryan, even though he's like an asshole now, but they're like, oh my God, I hope Bryan's okay, and saying all this stuff. But what's weird to me is that I was watching this and I'm kind of like, I'm like half shocked that this match is playing out the way it did, given that Bryan was so smug and confident coming in. You're like, he has to be up to something. Like, why is he acting like this? Other than like he's a heel now, but like there feels like there's something more going on in his head here. But he's getting destroyed. But so in my head, and I would love to see if Smackdown, if Bryan comments on this, if anyone picks up on this at all. But I was thinking like, is Bryan doing this on purpose? Like, is he? So I thought of that Bryan was implementing the rope-a-dope strategy, which, if you're not familiar, is a boxing strategy that Muhammad Ali used. I don't remember who he used it against because I'm not a boxing fan, but I know it's a thing that he did, where you would let your opponent basically beat the shit out of you on purpose. Like, you let them get their shots in, and all you do is defend. And the idea is that if you can last long enough, if you can weather the storm, you're gonna tire out your opponent, and then at that point, that's when you come back. And so I thought to myself, like, is Bryan doing this? Because, like, he's getting destroyed, but there's something about how I don't know, lackadaisical, but, like, it feels like Bryan is letting Brock do this. Like, he's not even trying to resist. Like, he's just, like, prone and letting Brock, like every time, like, go back and watch, like, every time Brock picks him up, Bryan has this kind of look like, okay, here we go. And again, that could just be him, like, realistically thinking, like, okay, here we go, in terms of, like, this is the planned move, like, all right, I'm bracing myself for this German suplex. But, like, in kayfabe, it felt like, no, like, I have to take this. And I feel like that's what this was, because later on, like, Brock hits an F5, and but Brock picks him up at 2, like, on purpose, because he's a mean person. And then eventually he tries to F5 him again, or at least, like, no, there's a point where, like, he drops Bryan, I forget what, and he tries to pick him up, and then Bryan kicks him in the head from the ground, and then Brock's like, what the hell, and he tries to pick him again, Bryan kicks him in the head again, and then Brock's just getting annoyed, because this is, like, the first sign of life that Bryan has shown for some time. And then Brock picks him up again, just this time by the leg to stop from getting kicked. Tries to hit an F5, but the ref is standing too close, and he winds up F5ing like, when he spins Bryan for the F5, like, his legs hit the ref and knock him down. So Bryan slips out, and then with the ref down, Bryan kicks Brock right in the balls, a la what he did to AJ Styles. And then he hits the running knee for a very close 2, and the crowd lost their shit for this. And then after this, Bryan is, like, has a second win. Like, he is all over Brock after this. Like, he is like, very much kind of like CM Punk did when he faced him at SummerSlam 2013. He is sticking and moving against Brock in a very smart way of, like, getting his stuff in, but also outmaneuvering Brock so that Brock can't get his hands on him, but kind of picking his spots in a very smart way. And he is holding his own in a way that it doesn't feel unbelievable, because, like, I guess on paper the idea that Bryan could do anything to Brock to hurt him would seem ridiculous, but Bryan is going about it in a realistic way of, like, yes, I'm smaller, so, like, I'm hitting him from, like, different angles and getting him down and keeping him down. Like, he has him down, he's, like, stomping on Brock's head, like, he's doing all these things that, yeah, like, would be brutal and would throw Brock for a loop. And I was really into this match, and I think that's what the story of this match was like, Bryan intentionally letting Brock beat him up and let Brock get into a false sense of security, thinking that Bryan is nothing. And because, like, by the time Bryan, before he made his comeback, Brock was getting super cocky, like you said, like, picking him up from the F5 when he probably could have won the match. And Bryan kind of, like, risking having to bank on that, you know, like, that's a huge risk of, like, I'm just gonna let him beat me up and hope that I can stay conscious long enough to eventually get to the point where I feel like I can come back. But, like, yeah, like, drawing him in, thinking that Bryan is nothing, and then once the time is right, come back. I feel like in my gut that was the story of this match, and that was what Bryan's strategy was, and why he was so confident before the match, because he knew that, I guess, knowing Brock's personality, he knew that would work. So I'm really curious, and I would love to know if anyone else picked up on that as well, or thinks that. But yeah, so this becomes super hot and exciting once Bryan starts coming out, where he starts working the leg. He's, like, wrapping Brock's knee around the post and he's just kind of systematically breaking Brock down and just dodging every major blow that Brock tries to come back with. And then in a neat moment, like, Brock eventually, like, Ryan hits his running drop kicks in the corner, and then Brock eventually catches him and lifts him up for the F5, but because of the knee work, he collapses. He can't hold Bryan up, and then Bryan just shifts seamlessly into the yes lock, and the crowd is losing their shit at this, and he has it on for a good while. Like, Brock tries to get out of it, but like Bryan starts like brutally like hitting him in the head, like just forearming him in the face repeatedly, and then puts the yes lock back on, and then like Brock tries to shift into a pin, but then Bryan just turns it into a triangle choke instead, and then. But then in the match, like Brock eventually he starts to fade, but then he manages to power Bryan up from the triangle, hit him into the F5, and then that F5 is enough to give Brock to win, and also completes a clean sweep in quotations because SmackDown won the pre-show, even though it doesn't matter, they won. A clean sweep for Raw on the main show. So, and that match was great. It was a really good match. I was again like after like I was saying like between that and the Rousey Flair match, like the final two matches on the show were super engaging and also very different in terms of what happened, or at least in terms of like the storytelling and what was going on. Like both of them told very different stories that sucked me into it. Yeah, now the big question is, so Bryan got a big face reaction, and also after the match, Brock goes to leave, and Bryan is on the mat. And he's got kind of a smile on his face. Like I guess the idea is that he knows that he had Brock on the ropes and kind of proved his point that he could beat him. But it was almost kind of reminding me of like Mick Foley in the Cell, or like just that smile. Like he had this kind of like he has no reason to be smiling, but I guess he kind of does because he put on a performance that no one expected against Brock. But it's like, but Bryan's a heel and he just turned heel, so we should hate him, right? But he got such a big underdog reception for this, and he just put on like the underdog performance of a lifetime, maybe. So it's like, are we supposed to hate Bryan now, even though he took Brock to the limit in a rather brilliant way? I mean, on SmackDown, I guess when AJ gets his retribution, we'll see. But this is another kind of like Bryan, it feels like he's going to be in the camp of like Becky and Charlotte, like heels that people love because they did the things that they wanted to do. I don't know. It's just so bizarre. Like, I don't know where Bryan, at least like reaction wise, where he goes here. I mean, I would imagine he's going to turn up the heelness all the way now that he can focus entirely on AJ. But yeah, this was really good and kind of lived up to what I had hoped Bryan versus Lesnar would be, with a really cool story. Or at least what I interpreted to be as the story of this match. But good stuff here. I mean, Brock winning was pretty much a foregone conclusion. I mean, obviously, I don't know if it's disappointing, because like I didn't expect Bryan to win. I would have liked it, obviously, but like it's like, yeah, Lesnar's gonna beat the WWE champion for the second year in a row because he's Brock Lesnar, and that's what he does. So it's kind of like same old from that, but at least we got like a really cool match out of it. But yeah, so it's like there's a mild element of like again, but at least there's like at least the road to get there was a lot of fun, and I would watch this match again, as well as the Charlotte Rousey match. Like those were two high points for an otherwise so show that was just kind of built on one idea without any real stories behind it, and was changed so much at the last minute. But yeah, I'd say if you're gonna watch the show, definitely watch those last two matches, and maybe the men's match, though not really. And probably the cruiserweight match too. I'd say if you want like a third dark horse to watch, I'd say check that one out too. But yeah, so we're moving on now to TLC, which is actually the next time you'll hear me with a review, is for TLC in like 3 or 4 weeks, whenever that is. But thanks for listening, guys. Survivor Series was a mixed bag, but like I said, it ended on two very high notes that paints some interesting pictures for the future. So thanks for listening, guys. If you want to reach out to me on Twitter and let me know what you thought of the show, you can do so at MarcusStewart7. That's the number 7. You can also find me at my my personal website, portfolio blog, whatever you want to call it, at marcuswritesabougames.wordpress.com, where I have all my video games, written work, features, reviews, all that good stuff from the various sites that I've published work for. You can also find my other podcast, Carving Gaming Rushmores, on the same channel that you find this fine show. It's a video game related like list debate show with me and 2 rotating guests where we determine the top 4 examples of a particular video game topic. And of course, you can also find that show and this show on iTunes, Podbean, and YouTube. Just look for Marcus Writes About Games. And finally, complete the series of the Survivor series of plugs. Sure, we'll say that. The Survivor series of plugs. If you enjoy role-playing and Dungeons & Dragons, you can hear me on 2 Dungeons & Dragons podcasts. The first is called We Wanted Adventurers, where I play a bard. And the second one is called Dragon Guard, where I play Tabaxi Ranger. Tabaxi is like a cat man. It's like Chester Cheetah, basically. At least in my eyes, that's what I picture it as. But they're both really funny, a lot of improv and just outlandish, over-the-top stuff. So if you enjoy like good improv comedy and role-playing, I highly recommend checking those out. You can find both shows, We Wanted Adventurers and Dragon Guard, on either extralife.com as well as SoundCloud and Libsyn. So, thanks for listening, guys. You'll hear me again for TLC, like I said. So until then, I will see you soon. Thanks for listening.